Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, a former D1 Hooper, current high school coach, teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sanko for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
That's it. Every week you surprise me, Omari. I never know what you're going to go with.
That's all I got. Your resume is too impressive, so why even compete, right? Like I have years in front of me before I catch up to that title. So I'm just conceding defeat. I'll let you have it. That's all I got for now. If I have anything to add, I'll add it, but that's all I got tonight. It's been a long day.
It has been a long day. We're staying up super late, guys. Omari been working all night. We got the people editing staying up late so we can bring you fresh content here on a Tuesday morning. Before we get started, Omari, we did have a couple new reviews. Our guy Matt Moderno, who does the Believe in Wizards podcast, left us a 5-star rating and review. And then Adam in the 48202 says, love the content, guys. I listen to every episode. Great analysis and lots of helpful explanations. He did bring up the content, guys. We're still working on it. We're recording on a new platform. We're trying to figure it out. We promise it's not going unnoticed. We're trying every week to figure the audio part out, but we appreciate the listens, the downloads, all the ratings and reviews.
No doubt. Appreciate the love. I promise you have a microphone right in front of me that I'm talking very deliberately into, so I'm not sure. I have no clue what's causing the audio issues, but we've been working on it with Kerry Jr., our audio producer, and we're going to get down to the bottom of it because I don't know anything about any of this stuff. I see a microphone and I think we're good. So it turns out there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that you actually have to tweak. So we're figuring it out. We're going to get it down. Don't worry.
Yes, we're staying on top of it. We want to bring you the best content, the best product we can. And speaking of product, Omari, the Detroit Pistons, they had 2 really, really well-played games. And we'll talk about the week as a whole, Omari. But on Sunday, they upset the Golden State Warriors. Monday night, right before we record this, they take the Milwaukee Bucks down to the wire. Let's start with that game, Omari. What were you most impressed by from tonight?
I would say for them to fall down 15 points in the first quarter, rally back. Like Milwaukee never quite took their foot off of the gas, and it just seemed like there were so many times that they were going to run away with the game, and then the Pistons somehow cut it to 6 or 5 or 8. And then for them to trail by 16 pretty late in the third quarter and then tie the game in the final minute. I just thought this was an extremely resilient game. This is a game I think a lot of people would have considered a scheduled loss. You play the Warriors at home, and then you have to fly out to Milwaukee and play Milwaukee in their home arena. I don't think that's a game to expect this team to compete in, but they competed. They almost won. Honestly, if they had Alec Burks or Marvin Bagley or just one more guy who could put the ball in the hoop, it might have been a different result. And this is, to be the definition of a quality loss, or the type of loss that I think everybody could be happy with, which, I'm sure there's probably one stray fan out there who's like, fired Dwayne Casey for losing this game. But, for the most part, I think this is exactly the type of game you want to see from this team in year 3 of the restoring, as they call it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think as we're recording this, there's a Twitter space that the title is Casey should have called a timeout or something. Like the Pistons got 2 really good looks from the best player. Cade Cunningham is him. Like, we're all tweeting it. We're all talking about it. Cade is so good in the mid-range. He gets a wide open mid-range jumper, Omari. He gets a wide open 3. He just didn't make them. Like, they got good shots. They fought back. Even Casey he's narrowed the rotation. They only played 9 guys. Omari, I don't want to say covered because you cover the team. Like, that's your real job. I've watched this team every single minute for 2 years and 8 games now. I don't remember very many games where he didn't play a 10-man rotation, and tonight he only went 9. Like, he's doing a lot of the things the fan base wants to see. Yeah,
and he's tweaked the lineup. He's tweaked the rotation. He's trying different things. And I agree with him not calling a timeout. I think you don't necessarily want the Bucks defense to be perfectly set. And like you said, Cade got 2 great looks. He had an open elbow shot that he's been hitting all game, or really he hasn't missed many of them over the last week or so. And then you got an open 3 at the end. So I really didn't have an issue with him not calling a timeout at all. And like we say this a lot, but it's early in the year, and it's just a time where a lot of teams are just in workshop mode, right? They're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. Sometimes teams hit the ground running. Sometimes they don't. We even saw with Boston last year. They kind of struggled for the first 2 months of the year, and then they clicked, and then they ended up going to the finals. So I think when it comes to basketball, you really have to look at it in 5 to 10 game sample sizes. You can't really react off of a rough first 3 or 4 games. Sixers are struggling right now, and even I'm sure they're not going to finish with a losing record this year. They have way too much talent. Yeah, a lot that I liked in this game. I like to see Hobby get going. For the second straight night, it seems like all the starters had a pretty good groove. There was a lot of good stuff. I thought there was a lot of stuff that they can build on and feel good about when they review film.
So let's talk about Hami for just a second, Omari, because we're going to talk about Cade. We're going to talk about Sadiq. We're going to talk about Killian, the rookies, all of that stuff. We're going to talk about those guys in this episode. But you mentioned Hami right. I don't even know what to think about Hami right now. I have it in my notes from one of the Hawks games. I'm done with Hami minutes. And then tonight at a certain point, I'm like, man, Hami's playing pretty well. He earned some extra time. He took a couple questionable shots. Where are you at with Hamidou Diallo? At the very least, he's playing hard. You see some of the upside with him. I just don't know whether I think he can be a long-term rotation guy or not.
Yeah, to me, he's just a pure energy guy. I think positionally, he is a bit of an awkward player to fit in because he's not really a wing. He's more of like an undersized power forward, maybe not defensively, but offensively. In the sense that in the last week, we've kind of seen him, make some plays from the dunker spot, and he has pretty good feel for knowing when to kind of duck in and find that space. And his teammates have been looking for him. He has some good energy plays tonight. I thought he really gave them energy, especially in the first half, to kind of keep them within striking distance. That eventually set them up to make that one final push toward the end. He's an interesting player. Like, I think he's a player that maybe people who, like me and you, like, we kind of like cover the team and watch closely, and like fans probably have the biggest disagreement on, because there was a lot of fans last year who were like, put the ball in Hami's hands, and we're like, no, like the appeal of Hami is that he doesn't need the ball at all. Like, you don't want to put the ball in his hands. He's a rebounder. He could, get tip-ins, dunks. He could create plays without the ball. Like, that's the point of playing him, and I thought we saw that tonight. But the thing with Hami, and I think the thing that just really kind of hurts, is that he doesn't shoot. And, with this second unit where you really only have two guys that could somewhat shoot, and, Corey Joseph, who didn't play tonight, and Isaiah Livers, I think it forces Hami to play. Like, I just think Hami's weaknesses stick out a little bit more because you need him in lineups that have sufficient spacing, because he's not going to give it to you.
Well, the second unit, especially tonight, Omari, didn't have any guys that really score the ball, right? So you have Hami takes the most shots with 9. The second most is Killian Hayes with 4, and we know that's not what he does best. Then you have Nerlens Noel and Isaiah Livers. I love Isaiah Livers, but he's not a guy that's going to eat up a lot of shots. You mentioned it earlier, Alec Burks probably helps you win this game, and it also helps that Coach Dwayne Casey staggered minutes. We saw Ivy with the second unit, Bay with the second unit. But you're right. Whenever you get some of those guys that score the ball when Marvin Bagley III gets back, that's going to help the second unit get better. I do want to mention, I think a huge moment in this game, Omari, and I think it probably went unnoticed at the time. The Pistons were down 10, like 2 minutes to go in the fourth. Hami took an ill-advised 3 and almost airballed. Ivy took an ill-advised 3 and pretty much airballed. And then Killian took an ill-advised 3. In the moment, it's like, oh, they're down 10. Is it that big of a deal? But when you see where the game ended up, those 3 possessions may have ended up playing a huge factor in this game. And that's the second unit just not having bucket getters.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And you see a lot of possessions for the second unit that just kind of fizzle out because they can't create anything. The defense is giving everybody space. They're packing the paint. And, you just can't do anything, right? Like, Isaiah Livers is either hitting shots or nothing really gets done. Bench had 18 points tonight. They had 17 points against the Warriors. I think this bench, like, I would have to go back and check. I think they've probably cracked less than 25 points in almost every game this season except maybe one. And that's been a massive problem this season. So they definitely miss Marvin Bagley III. I think once he comes back, we're going to see a dramatic difference in just what that second unit is able to do. I think it'll help Killian out, just from a playmaking standpoint. If you put Burks and Marvin Bagley in that unit, I think that just about fixes most of the issues they've had so far.
So I do want to ask this from you, Omari, before we move into that Warriors game, which was obviously the highlight of the week for the Pistons. The Pistons come out and they match up Isaiah Stewart on Giannis, which puts Sadiq Bey on Brook Lopez. I'll be honest with you, that was what I wanted to see. I went into this game with this starting lineup and I said, I think I would like to see Isaiah on Giannis, and then that would, obviously you got to put Bey on Brook Lopez in that situation. Were you surprised by that? Would you have liked to see something different? Obviously Lopez went off tonight. Giannis, I don't know that you can stop him anyway, but I kind of like those matchups.
Yeah, I mean, you're just kind of picking your poison, right? Especially with this team basically having no size at all. It was just Isaiah Stewart and Nerlens Noel out there who made his season debut tonight. And Isaiah Stewart did have some foul trouble. He picked up 4 fouls before the fourth quarter, so, it wasn't flawless for him defensively. But To me, that's just pick your poison. If Brook Lopez pops off for 24 points like he did tonight, you just live with that. Giannis did have a pretty quiet pretty quiet first half until I think he scored 10 or 12 straight points at one point in the third quarter. And once Giannis gets going, like there's just not a single player in the NBA who's slowing him down. But I like the job Isaiah Stewart did overall. Like, I think defensively, I just like that Isaiah Stewart is like he's big and burly, so you could put him in the paint and he can match up against guys, but he still has the footwork to try to stick with guys in the perimeter. So again, it's Giannis. You're not going to do a whole lot against him. Best you could do is just hope he misses some shots. But like, I thought Isaiah Stewart held his own tonight.
Real quick, because he didn't play in the Warriors game, Nerlens Noel, we got to see his first minutes tonight. Are we going to continue to see Noel minutes, or is it just going to be in situations where Jalen Duren is injured and Marvin Bagley's still out? Or do you think this was the start of him playing consistent rotation minutes for the Pistons?
I really do think he's just an emergency option. I don't think they traded for him with the expectation that he would necessarily be a big rotation player, and things can always change. But I think when you get Jalen Duren and you have Bagley, and those are the guys who you're building around, per se, and especially you have a player in Duren who on paper can give you everything that Nerlens gives you, even though he's a rookie, so he's not always going to do that. But they're in development mode, and Dwayne, like, he's used the emergency glass phrase for playing Nerlens a few times, and I think that's the situation. I think if guys are banged up, we'll see him, and he's a veteran, he knows what to do, but I would think Marvin and Jalen would probably be ahead of him for most of the season.
All right, let's go to the Warriors game. Again, the highlight of the week, Omari. We got to talk about it. A 128-114 victory for the Pistons on Sunday night. The starters were just incredible. And again, we'll talk about the week as a whole from these guys. Sadiq with 28, Stu with 24 and 13, maybe his best game as a pro, at least statistically. Cade with 23, 10 and 9, almost a triple-double. Bojan is a professional bucket getter, man. This guy is going off right now, 21. And then Jaden Ivey with 15. The starting lineup was just incredible, scoring the basketball in this game.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, by a pretty significant margin, that's the best the Pistons have looked this entire season. You had all five guys in the groove. I thought Cade, just had a really brilliant game, picking his spots, but also kind of letting the offense flow through and around him, not necessarily shooting other guys out of rhythm, which Cade never does. Even when he picks his spots, he's still, he's always going to sneak up on you with a nice pass here and there. Like, that's one thing I like about Cade is that for him, when he's really in a groove, there's no, okay, now I'm going to shoot. Okay, now I'm going to pass. Okay, now I'm going to shoot. It's just whatever the play dictates, he's going to go do. But that was just a great game from top to bottom. I mean, Bojan's been incredible for this group, obviously, through the first 2 weeks. He's just a bucket. Like, there's no other way to put it. I looked it up earlier today because I did a story just breaking down his extension. And he's like the only player averaging more than 30 minutes. That also, his true shooting was like 72% or something. Like, it was like the highest. Only guy who was like within that same range was like Michael Bridges. Man. And it's just like, it's just insane. He's been insanely good. But also Sadiq, he had 28 points against the Warriors. Like, that was his best game of the year. And I think him and Bojan, there's a little bit of push and pull sometimes just because they do a lot of similar things and they kind of run some of the same sets. But I thought Sadiq had a really nice night, and he's had a sneaky good season so far, too, when you look at his efficiency. He's definitely been a lot more efficient than last year, even though he's taking fewer shots on average.
Yeah, I think for Sadiq, it's just staying with the process, Omari. Catch and shoot. He has turned down some shots. I wrote an article about it where stop turning down shots, Sadiq. Catch and shoot that thing if you can get it off. I don't like the sidestep three. I don't want to see him shoot it anymore. But if there's a hard closeout, he can shot fake and drive. He's good at that. And go in there, get to the free throw line, make some buckets in the lane. Or if somebody steps over, then he's a good enough passer to make that read. I think where fans start to get frustrated, and I think they have to understand this, Omari, and maybe you disagree, but Sadiq's scoring output is going to be a little bit dependent on the defense and what the other members of the team are doing. He's not just going to go get his own bucket. If Cade's getting off, if Bojan's getting off, if Jaden's getting off, Sadiq may not get a lot of attempts. And if you look at his scoring output, it's been a little bit up and down, but it kind of coincides with his field goal attempts, and I think that's going to fluctuate all year.
And I think we're seeing sort of the natural pecking order emerge where, Cade and Bojan are your 1 and your 2. And then, it's essentially Sadiq and Jaden trading off being that 3 or 4, just depending on how Jaden's playing, because he has nights like tonight against the Bucks where he just kind of knifed through the defense with no issues. And then you're going to have nights where you're not quite doing that as well. But also Sadiq, I think this is overall good for him to not have to be in the position he was in last year where you basically have to be the number 2 to have a chance to win. He was good at it some nights. He had some good stretches, but he was also, I think, outside of his comfort zone a lot. And this season, I don't think it's a step back for him. If things were just kept a little bit simpler, like you said, he's been turning down shots. Don't do that. Just take those catch and shoot threes. That should always be his bread and butter, even if he does end up becoming more of a Chris Middleton type. Like, that's just, I think any good shooter wants those shots, so you shouldn't turn those down. They're going to probably ask a little bit less of Sadiq this season, and I think that's probably good for him in the long run to not have that pressure to create that he felt last season.
Well, and one of the things from this game overall, and you mentioned it with the Bucks game, Omari, is the Pistons got down, I think, 12, 14, something like this early in the game, at some point in the first quarter. I think it was in the third quarter. Jordan Poole goes on a 12-0 run all by himself. I mean, sometimes I do want to talk about these other guys that the Pistons play against because they are impressive. Jordan Poole went crazy in that game and was really impressive. But the Pistons, this young Pistons team, weathered the storm. They kept their composure. They answered, and it looked like one of those classic Warrior runs, and the Pistons just didn't let it happen. They came right back at them, and I think that may be the most impressive thing from these two games on Sunday and Monday is Detroit's ability to answer those runs from the defending champs and then the Milwaukee Bucks, who were champs just a couple years ago.
No doubt. They're playing with a confidence right now. And I think, despite the rough start, this is a team that's starting to understand that it could actually compete. It helps a lot, I think, to have a guy in Bojan who's going to be consistent every single game. That's taking a lot of pressure off of these young guys. And a lot of stuff just crystallized against Golden State. I mean, I think they were up 19 at one point, and they did a good job catching a Golden State team that I believe lost to Charlotte Saturday night. So they probably had some tired legs and whatnot. Even so, Jordan Poole and Steph Curry both scored 30, so I think anytime that happens, you're probably going to favor Golden State to win. And it just seemed like for the vast majority of that game, they were never really in it. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of growth from the Pistons right now.
These are two really good teams. It's early in the year, and we see them pick up a win against the Warriors. And then the second night of a back, I was nervous for this game, Omari. I'm not even going to lie to you. I was nervous. The second night of a back-to-back in Milwaukee, a team that the Pistons have, recently haven't been very good against, and we got the Bucks' best effort tonight. Giannis had to be great. Drew Holiday. I'm an idiot. I was such a casual whenever that trade went down because I was like, Drew Holiday, Eric Bledsoe, that's essentially a 1-for-1. Like, people are going to roast me for this, but I'll admit my failures. I mean, I was such a casual NBA fan back then to not realize how much of an upgrade that was. Drew Holiday was awesome tonight offensively. And if you want to know how the Pistons can be successful in drop coverage, you have to do what Drew Holiday does defensively on the ball. That guy is a two-way player, and he is really, really good.
Yeah, Drew Holiday is a beast. Of course, he had that back-breaking three toward the end that kind of clinched the game for them. But he just made plays all night that were just great plays. Like, he's one of those basketball players where he never really does anything that really pops off of the screen, but then you look down, and it's like, oh, he has 22 points. And you watch this defense all night, and, he's probably the best. There probably aren't two guys in the NBA better at perimeter defense than he is. And I think just year in and year out, he's consistently one of the best, which makes a massive, massive difference. I actually think Cade, if everything shakes out right for him, he could be sort of a Drew Holiday type player, especially if he really figures things out on the defensive end. And, of course, for him to do that, you probably need to pair him with a Giannis because not too many superstars are exerting the defensive energy that Drew Holiday is every night. But he's good, man. He's good. I think nights like tonight just shows just how big of a trade that was for him.
And we're going to talk more about Cade here shortly, but you brought up the defense. I actually think Cade's defense has been a little bit better here the last couple of games. I've been very critical of Cade's defense going back to his rookie season. I thought people maybe were giving him too much credit for being a good rookie defender. I didn't think he was. Early in the season, the first handful of games, I didn't. But the last couple of games, he's done some really good things on the defensive end, especially on the ball, especially when he's not fouling. Like, that's been an issue still for the Pistons. And we're going to talk about them drawing fouls, but this young team has to figure out a way to stay out of foul trouble, especially right now where the depth is limited.
Yeah, they do. And that's probably been the biggest issue. Well, I won't say the biggest issue. The biggest issue I say has probably been their best scoring on offense, but one of the issues that they've had.
So I got to ask you one thing before we move on. I was listening to the Bucks pregame music, and it was awful. Did you get a chance to hear? Like, I know coming from me, that doesn't mean much. Don't ask me what the songs were. I don't know. I just was like, man, this is really bad. I'm not trying to throw shade at Milwaukee. I don't really care. But I was like, man, this is not very good. The Detroit pregame with Mason and everything was way better than what I heard from Milwaukee tonight. It just made me appreciate what we get at LCA.
So I don't know why, but League Pass, I didn't make the trip to Milwaukee, just FYI, in case anybody was wondering. So I was watching the game on League Pass at home, and I don't know what it is about League Pass, but it's super finicky. So I had to I kept trying to get the pregame to load, like 15 minutes before 8 p.m., and it just wouldn't load. So I closed the app, restarted, go on there, wouldn't load, close the app again, turn the TV off, turn it back on, try it, still didn't work. Turn the TV off, I unplug the TV, wait 10 seconds, plug it back in, turn the TV back on. Finally, League Pass works, and it's right on time for the Pistons intro. So that's a long-winded way of, really it's just a sideways way for me to vent about League Pass. But I missed most of the pregame music. But I did hear the song that they played during the Pistons intros.
Yeah.
And I did not know what song it was. It kind of sounded like something like Celine Dion or something from like 30 years ago. I don't know what it was, but I think it's kind of funny when teams play just like some weird like 90s ballad when the other team is being introduced, just because like it cracks me up. I don't know why. It just seems super random, but I always like when teams don't lean into like this team's the antagonist. Like, let's bring them out to like some 90s outro music at the end of like a romantic movie or whatever that song was. That's what it sounded like.
I love it. Yeah, I've heard other people issues with the League Pass. I luckily have not. Knock on wood. It's worked well for me because that's the only way I get to watch the game. So hopefully they get that figured out. I know a lot of people rely on that to watch not just the Pistons, but keep track with the NBA in general. So when we come back from the short break, we're going to review the week in general, the injury news, individual players, lineups, the trends that we have going on, and talk about our Pistons week as a whole.
All right, hey, Carlos, just a quick idea. How about if I say, hey, this is Sean Windsor, and you say, hey, this is Carlos Morales, and I'll go, and then we'll go back. You want to try that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Hey, this is Sean Windsor.
And this is Carlos Benares.
And we are the team behind Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean, where we are going to talk about, you guessed it, sports, but lots of other stuff. Like what, Carlos?
Oh, we're going to talk about your favorite subject, Sean, food. Probably more food. Arts, culture, sports, TV, movies, you name it. If it's happened in Detroit, we're going to talk about it.
And sometimes we're going to have guests in who obviously know a lot more than we do about just about everything. But we're going to have some Free Press journalists to talk about big stories, folks from the sports world. We're going to be out every Thursday. You can find this podcast wherever you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We hope you'll join us.
All right, we're back, and we're going to lead off with not really injury news, but just injury recaps. The Pistons were without Jalen Duren against the Bucks because he tweaked his ankle in the fourth quarter of Sunday's game against the Warriors. They are still waiting on the return of Alec Burks, who is several weeks past his reevaluation date. He was supposed to be reevaluated a couple of days before the season started, and we are obviously well past that. So will we get an update soon? Will we not? I don't know. The team's been extremely vague about it.
Marvin Bagley, was there good news about Marvin Bagley?
There was good news about Marvin Bagley. Dwayne said earlier this week that he is trending toward his return. So I believe his reevaluation date is within the next week. So we could see him back at some point in November. And of course, that'll be a pretty big get for them. And then beyond that, just, Nerlens Noel made his debut tonight, obviously. So he's back. So it's just more so getting that big man rotation straight at this point. I think if you get Duren and you get Bagley, you feel pretty good.
Yeah, I think maybe one of you guys reported that Bagley was playing some one-on-one at practice or something, which is a really good sign, to be playing one-on-one. Like, he's got to be really close if he's doing that. Jalen Duren did not make the trip to Milwaukee, at least tonight. Is that correct? I mean, I think we know. Is that about the extent of what we know at time of recording?
I don't know for a fact, but I know that after the game Sunday, he was definitely not feeling too well about the ankle, which, was a sprain. So whether it's a high sprain, a low sprain, grade 2, grade 1, whatever, I think that remains to be seen. But certainly seems like he could miss a few games here.
I'm of the mindset if they want to hold him out Wednesday, leave him in Detroit, I'm cool with that. Wait until Friday when they play Cleveland. You're going to need some big size against the Cavaliers. I know the Bucks play big as well, Omari. I get it, but Cleveland's going to bring in a big lineup as well. Let's talk about the other big, the one that is playing, Isaiah Stewart. And let's just start there for a little bit. the 3-point shot, it's a little inconsistent right now. He's not shooting it great, but let's talk about him as a role man and not having a lob threat on this team. I think this is an issue right now. I know he's had a couple good games. I actually did a breakdown of him not setting screens very well. What do you think? Where do you want to see Isaiah Stewart kind of keep his focus and his attention? Is it just on the threes? Do you want to see him a little bit better as a role man? Where does Isaiah Stewart need to go offense? Or are you just completely fine with what we've seen from the big man?
For the most part, I'm fine. I think that just with the Pistons doing offense, it asks him to do things that long term he probably just won't be a stress. I don't know what you can do to make him a better road threat. And he's a little undersized. He's not the best leaper. He's got solid touch around the rim, especially when they post him up, but they're not going to post him up a lot. So I just think as far as his interior game, you just have a series of options that are probably less than ideal just for his build and how he plays. I think he's been taking around 4 threes a game, which is a very healthy number, and is helped by the fact that teams are not defending him out there. And he's going to stick with that. I know they self-confidence in him shooting pretty well, and I think he was 2 for 5 against the Warriors, and he was 2 for 5 in their previous game against the Hawks. So you shoot 2 for 5, twice every 3 games or whatever. I think everybody's happy about that. But to me, that's probably what's going to give him, a bit more utility on offense, just being able to knock those threes down consistently. You can still have him screen, roll, all that stuff. But long term, that's probably something you want Duran to specialize in a bit more. And for them to play together, you want Isaiah Stewart shooting. So to me, the focus is he taking threes? Is he making threes? That's the main key for me this season for him.
Yeah, we talked about this. Stay with the process, continue to shoot 3, 4, 5 threes a game, and just stay with that, because that's the long-term upside. I do say I want to see the screens get better. Again, I kind of highlighted where I think just some of the on-ball screens helping Cade get open, and I do think he's been better the last couple of games. And if they're going to play off of him, again, we've talked about this, but he's got to go do the Draymond screens. If he catches, they're going to play 5 feet off of him. If he's not comfortable shooting the 3 in the moment, then go into a DHO and make contact and then attack the defense that way. So I would like to see Stu's feel for setting some of these screens just get a little bit better. There was a play in the Hawks game where I believe it was Sadiq, maybe the first play of the game, created a ton of separation from John Collins, and then Stu missed the screen and Collins ended up getting there for the block shot. So I do think just the different ways he can add value as an offensive player. We see him doing the little tip out offensive rebounds every night. Those are huge and create extra possessions. But I do think there's some other little things he can do, specifically the screening, to help his value on the offensive end. I
agree. And I think screening is a field thing that he'll continue to learn with time. I know they talked a lot about the highway screens last season.
Yeah.
And he can set them. He's a strong screener and a great screener when he wants to be. It's just to be that possession consistency that really hasn't been there. So that's absolutely a growth area for him as well. And good screening can help him, whether he's rolling to the rim or popping. Either way, you need to be able to help your teammates out a little bit more.
I think it's easy to say, just set a good screen, but the NBA game happens so fast. It's not that easy. There's some nuance to it. There's some feel. There's an art to being a really good screener, or everybody would be really good at it. Let's move to Cade Cunningham, Omari, because before we left last episode, I think we each said one thing we were looking forward to the next week. And I believe you said you wanted to see Cade pop off a little bit. And man, has that happened. His efficiency wasn't great going into this week. Struggled a little bit to start the week, and then the last, 4 games or something like that, he's just gone crazy. Now, we'll talk about his efficiency in general. Still not getting to the free throw line. The 3-point shot has gotten better, but this is the Cade Cunningham I think everybody wanted to see from the beginning of the year. And, man, he looks like the face of the franchise right now.
Yeah, he's just been an absolute sniper from mid-range, really getting into the lane, really picking his spots, slithering his way to the rim. Passing has still been good, although he's had some turnover issues, which – he had those last year too. I think, for guys with the ball that much, it's normal to turn the ball over a lot early. I think if you look at the all-time list for turnovers, it's guys like Westbrook and James Harden. Long term, I think he'll kind of iron some of those out. But he's just been good. I think it's been a bit of a surprise to see him almost abandon the 3-point shot entirely for a few games, and he got back to it against the Bucks. I know he hit his first 3-pointers. I think he kind of fell off towards the end of the game. Yeah, he
3 of 9. Yeah.
3 of 9. But just for him to find, even without the 3-point shot, I think for him to get into the lane and continually hit those elbow jumpers, those sidestep crossover, whatever it may be. He probably won't continue to hit them at the tour pace he's been hitting them at, but I think that could absolutely be a bread and butter part of his game and something that he can continually go to. So that's been good to see. I know he was averaging 28 a game in his last 3 before the Bucks game, and then he finished that game with, I believe, 27. So, he's really, I think, finding his groove as the primary option. One thing I want to see is just, it seems like when he comes out of halftime, he tends to kind of cool off a little bit. It seems like in all these games, he's scored like 2/3 of his points in like the first half, and then after he's just kind of falls off. So I don't know if that is, just him not adjusting to adjustments or, maybe just wearing down a little bit. But overall, he's been good. Like, there really hasn't been a lot of negatives. I think him and Bojan are forming a really good 1-2 punch on offense.
Okay, I want to come back to the second half thing, Omari, but you brought up, not made up, it's true, it's a fact. You brought up a good point about the 3-point shooting. So the first 3 games, 6, 6, and 8 attempts from 3. And that's when the efficiency wasn't great. He was still scoring okay, but the efficiency wasn't great. The next 5, 2, 3, 3, and 3. So he did cut down on those 3-pointers and really went to the mid-range, really went to the rim. And then, as you mentioned tonight, he makes his first 3, so he keeps shooting them, ended up 3 and 9. I think the biggest thing I would like to see along with the second half is I want to see him get to the free throw line, Omari. Like, whatever it is that he has to do to get there more often, that's where the efficiency is really going to come into play. He may never be a 40% 3-point shooter, but he could, he's going to be 35%. The mid-range, maybe not the pace he's on right now, but it's going to be there. But he's never going to score the numbers on the shot attempts that maybe we want if he's not getting to the free throw line 6, 7, 8 times a night.
And maybe there's some calls that he still isn't quite getting, but I also think just his natural play style is not one where he's throwing his body, into defenders and like drawing that contact. Like, that's just not how he attacks the game. He's very methodical, and he's not going to attack unless he thinks he has a chance to like make the layup, which is good. Obviously, you want him to take shots he thinks he can hit, but also, there are opportunities where you just play for contact. And I think we see a lot of the great guards of the NBA, James Harden, whoever it may be. I'm not saying Cade has to do it to the extent that James Harden does it, but but they play for contact. They understand that the possession is a win whether you get the layup or you just draw the contact. Like, if you draw contact, that's a win. And I don't think Cade thinks about the game in that way. Like, he understands the value of a free throw, obviously, but he's not playing in a way that's going to get him to the line, between 6 and 10 times a night. And to me, that is just probably a longer term adjustment for him. I don't think that's just a switch you kind of flip on. I think just that's how he's comfortable playing. And it may just be something that he just has to kind of be coached on and, maybe work on next offseason. Just get in there, take contact, maybe just do drills where you're only taking contact. Like, if you have to, pump fake 5 times until you draw the defender, do that in scrimmages or whatever. But that's just, to be a game adjustment that he has to make.
It's a mentality, Omari. And I think a lot of times for fans, it's almost harder for them to be like, well, if it's a mentality, just change your It's not that easy. It's not easy to change the mentality of someone that's been playing a certain way. Like, Cade's 21 right now? That's super young, but he's been playing since he was 10 years old. So he's been playing a certain way for almost 10 years. And it's not easy to change that mentality overnight. So I think you're right. And I think that speaks to the second half thing. So last year, Cade averaged 16 field goal attempts a game. This season, I don't know that this includes tonight's game, but he's averaging roughly 20 field goal attempts a game. I wonder if the second half drop off is like, he's just not used to taking this many shots. He's being so aggressive in the first half, and then he's coming out and asking to be aggressive again in the second half. And whenever your mentality is more like 16 shots, not 23 shots like he had tonight, or 23 and 25 like he did against the Hawks, like, there's a mindset around that is going to mess with your efficiency. So to me, it's not as much about anything else as like, I don't know that he's mentally preparing himself every night to take 25 shots.
I would agree with that. I think the way, again, I think Cade just thinks like a point guard. And I think that the baseline way he attacks games is not necessarily to go out and take a bunch of shots. If he has those shots available and he gets into a rhythm early, especially, that he's going to do that because it makes sense. But he doesn't necessarily have like that, I'm going to just go out and get a bunch of buckets mentality, which I think in the long run is fine, as he gets more talent around him and, his teammates get better. But, in the short term, they probably need him just being attack mode all the time, to have a chance to win. And it could just be an adjustment in that way, right? Like, he's on the court, like Jaden Ivey's having a solid night. Bojan, he's more so coming out of halftime and letting things kind of flow through him. And I think sometimes when he does that, you could tell sometimes when he shoots, his rhythm is off. Like he'll have a three where he kind of hurried the three more than he normally does, or maybe his mid-range shot was just a little bit too off balance, and then he kind of has to resettle himself a little bit. So I think that'll just come with more, progressions. He's still adapting to the NBA. But I do think that there could be something there as far as that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it tonight. I think Drew Holiday fell down late in the game, and Cade was going to have a wide open shot, and you could tell he kind of hesitated because I'm with you. I think his mentality is get my teammates shots, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think long term it's going to be perfect, and thank goodness they have Bojan, and we'll talk about his contract extension here to start the next segment. But I have kind of an interesting idea, and I don't know that everybody's going to agree with this, but I think they should put the ball in Jaden Ivey's hands to start second halves.
I don't disagree with that. I think just from the maybe a coaching standpoint of if Cade's natural disposition after halftime, especially if you shot out in the first half, is to kind of take a step back a little bit and let his teammates get going. Then let Jaden Ivey get going. There's a lot of talk about staggering those two, and they're still working out their fit. I thought tonight they played well together for sure. But yeah, just tell Jaden, hey man, just go ahead, go in there. Jaden is going to draw contact because his entire game is getting downhill. So that could give Cade maybe the mental break he needs, and now Cade can kind of be more of the point guard type, setting his teammates up, and Jaden Ivey's attacking. And that could be that's Coach Bryce talking. That's the coaching mind of you figuring out how to maximize two of your talents. I think that would be a pretty natural, maybe not solution, just depending on how the game is flowing, but on nights like tonight where Cade comes out cold, you could just tell Cade to play off ball a little bit more, or just be more of a secondary, and then Jaden can go out and attack, and that could probably remedy some of that.
And it doesn't have to be every night. If Cade only takes 5 shots in the first half, then by all means, let Cade go crazy to start the second half. But if Cade's taken 13 shots in the first half, and in his mind, 20 shots is kind of where he's most comfortable, then either put the ball in Jaden's hands or run actions to get Jaden, run him off some staggers, just know the action's going there. I don't know. It just kind of hit me one, that would get Jaden going and let him get off a little bit more. But it would, like you said, give Cade a mental break. And I just wonder if there's a 20 shot a game thing with Cade where he almost feels like he's shooting too much when he starts to get around that point. So I don't know if it's something we'll see or not. I was just kind of thinking about it tonight as maybe this could, solve two things where it lets Ivey get a little more usage as well. Before we move on and take our next break, I want to talk about the defense, Omari. It hasn't been good. Here against Milwaukee tonight, they give up 110. So this was probably one of their better defensive performances, but the defense has really struggled. I think there's a few different things. They've been really, really bad in transition. Again, I did a breakdown on that, kind of looking into some of the reasons why. Have you got any, perspective or maybe anything coming from the organization, from talking with Dwayne Casey, maybe Jerome Allen, on where this team needs to get better on the defensive end in their minds?
Yeah, I think two areas, like you mentioned, transition. I know that's been a pain point for Dwayne. But then also just, I think their interior defense has been pretty bad as well. I know last week, the Hawks and the Wizards had a pretty easy time just getting into the lane and just dicing the Pistons up in the interior, which I think the primary problem is just, if we talked about this before the season, but how many plus defenders does this team have? Isaiah Stewart and Killian Hayes. And Killian's been averaging 17 minutes a game, around that. So you just don't have a lot of players on the team who are plus defenders right now. Sadiq's not a plus on that end. Cade hasn't been a plus on that end. Duran, I think he has potential to be, but, he still gives up buckets. He hasn't been prime Dwight Howard, even if he kind of looks like him physically. So I think there's a lot of things really that they could be doing better. I think the guards have been really bad at keeping opposing guards outside of the lane. Guards have pretty much been able to penetrate with ease. A lot of issues, honestly. I mean, this team is just not good defensively, which young teams typically are not. But, I do think they have a lot of room to grow as well. And I do think they will get better as the year goes on, just as guys kind of figure out what they need to be doing within that scheme.
And I know we've talked about this a little, Omari, but I want to reiterate, they're not switching as much as what we saw last year. The stats back this up. They're trying to play drop covers. They're trying to ice ball screens. Even sometimes when they switch, and I don't mean to insult anybody's intelligence when I say this, I think sometimes the fans are seeing them switch. Well, they're actually in drop coverage. It's just the guard didn't get around the ball screen. So then they're forced to switch after the fact. But I think it's really putting a lot of pressure on their communication because they're switching 1 through 4, but not with the 5. And then I was listening to Richard Jefferson the other day on the low post, and he was talking about it. I think the phrase they said, if there's no screen, no scheme. So essentially you're going to switch the ball screen or drop coverage the ball screen. But then if the guy slips it, then it completely changes how you defend it. So there's just a lot of things to work out. And there's a lot of chemistry that goes along with that. And so like you said, I think 40 games from now, we could see this team be a lot better. And they're going to be better for it going through these struggles early in the season because they weren't going to be able to just switch every screen for the next 10 years and be successful, even as they got more talented.
No, and I think, along with all of the switching, even if there's a lot of miscommunication and, players just not executing the scheme properly, personnel-wise, they probably also, like they're not the Toronto Raptors, right? They don't quite have the personnel, I think, to play that scheme to the extent that you would like to. Which, again, like they've had Duran and like Drop, they're not switching everything like they were during preseason. I do think they have a chance to get better as the year goes on. Like I buy Cade and Ivy's upside on that end of the floor. And I think Ivy's looked like a rookie defensively, as you sort of expect from a player who's played 7 NBA games because he had the flu last week. I like your upside on that end. They've been bad. I thought tonight against the Bucks was actually really their last 2 games have been 2 of their best efforts against the last 2.
Really good teams.
Like the last 2 champs. So, I guess we could maybe give that a little bit more of a sample size and see what happens. But I would say, they've gotten off to a great start this week. So maybe they're trying to figure some things out.
Yeah, let's end this on a positive note. The Pistons are drawing fouls at a really good rate and getting to the free throw line at a really good rate, Omari. So this is from teamrankings.com. Pistons are 5th in fouls drawn at 23.1, only got 19.8 last season, which was 17th. This is before tonight's game. And then they're 2nd in free throw attempts per 100 possessions at 29.6. Last year, they were only getting 22.2. Those are really impressive numbers to me, Omari. And an 8-game sample size, again, tonight, they got to the free throw line quite a bit they had 21 attempts. So not quite as much, but still 18 to 21 from the free throw line. 8-game sample size. If this continues, this is a really nice development for this team, attacking the lane, putting pressure on the other team, drawing fouls, and making free throws.
It's interesting because they lost Jeremy Grant, who was one of the better players in the league at getting to the line. And, but overall, I think as a team, they're getting to the line more than they were last year. Isaiah Stewart's averaging 6 free throws a game. Sadiq's averaging about 4, K's averaging about 4, Bojan's averaging about 4, and Jaden Ivey's close to 4. So it really is just a group effort here. We actually talked to Isaiah and Sadiq in the locker room after the Warriors game about it, and they both kind of said it's just, the NBA, you really have to learn how to sell that contact. Like Isaiah said, that he's been, like there are things he does, like he just knows he has to sell that contact a little bit more because he's a big guy, and the refs are going to forgive a lot more contact against him just because of his play style. So, they're picking up some veteran tricks, I think. They're learning how the NBA works, how the referees call games. So there's probably just some natural progression there. But it really has been a group effort, and I think that's the thing that's most impressive about it. It's not one player kind of carrying the weight. You just have 4 or 5 players who are making a point to get to the free throw line a few times a game.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to talk about that group of players and the extension that Troy Weaver gave Bojan Bogdanovic after this short break.
I'm Alyssa Robinson for the Detroit Free Press. When you wake up every morning, what's the first thing you do? Check your email? Me too. And when you sign up for our daily briefing newsletter, you'll get all the latest news sent directly to your inbox so you can wake up and be ready for the day. We also have newsletters about COVID-19 in Michigan, the latest entertainment headlines, as well as Woodward 248, a newsletter specifically for people living and working in Southeast Oakland County. And don't forget about automotive headlines and all the latest news from our Michigan sports teams. We have a newsletter for every personality and preference. Just head to freep.com/newsletters to sign up for any one of these great options and more.
All right, we're back, and we're going to look ahead at a few things here. We're going to lead off with the Bojan contract extension, which is about $9.6 billion per year over the next 2 years.
19.6.
19.6. But partially guaranteed for $2 million in that second year. So really, on paper, it is a 1-year extension. If the Pistons want to keep him for 2, they could keep him for 2. But to me, it's just really smart money. When they traded for him, you kind of heard murmurs of, the Pistons being interested in keeping him around long term. So it's not, and he's played so well that it's not a shock that the Pistons just saw the first, 5-6 games and were like, all right, let's just let this sit down. Like, why even let this linger? Like, he absolutely fits our culture. He's been great. Let's just do it. And I think what's really great about it is not only just a partial guarantee, for that 2024-25 season, but also the fact that they still have close to $50 million in cap space next summer. They have way more cap space than they're going to even be able to use, I think, next summer. So to get Bojan locked in, he's a part of your core now, and you still have plenty of money to play with. I think it's just a win for really all parties involved, because Bojan's also absolutely going to live up to that deal.
He's on a 50-50-90 right now, Omari. 52% from the field, 50% from 3, 94% he's averaging 23 a game. Like, I don't care that he is bad. He's bad on defense, Omari. He's bad. I don't care because he scores the ball, and it's not just shooting threes. He's getting to the rim. Like, he tries on defense. So my other thing is, I don't think anything about his game right now is going to age poorly over the next 12 to 18 months. He's already bad defensively, so it's not like it's going to get that much worse. And everything he does offensively is sustainable based on his game. Like, you don't have to be that fast when you shoot the way Bojan does, because the closeouts are going to come so hard. All you got to do, you don't have to have the Trey Lyles shot fake to go by people. Like, you just got to give him a little head fake, and you're going to create advantages. So I like the deal. It grew on me more and more. And then it was even better. Like, it's a slam dunk with only $2 million guaranteed in the second year. Like, are you kidding me? They weren't going to be able to spend all that money in the offseason anyway. And when Andrew Wiggins re-signed with the Warriors, there's not a whole lot of names on that free agency list that I'm super enticed by anyway. So he's probably the best free agent you would have got. You got him for essentially Saban Lee, and why am I blanking on who else they traded?
Kelly Olynyk.
Goodness gracious. It is 11 o'clock at night out here in Kansas, but that's not a very good excuse. So, I mean, you got him for essentially nothing. He's been great. I think this was a great contract. Bojan must be happy in Detroit. And the other thing is, it's a great contract to trade if it still gets to that point.
There really is no downside here for the Pistons. To get that last year partially guaranteed is good work. But even, at the $19.5 billion, that still might be worthwhile to pick up. Because again, like you said, even if he's not quite a number 2 option, when he's 35 going into, being 36 years old, the shooting should still keep up. The cap's due to go up a good bit over the next 2 years. So, the couple of years, maybe that's closer to 15 billion rather than almost 20. Just a lot to like. Like, he's not going to sustain the start he's had so far. Like, I'll be shocked if he's shooting above 50%, from the field and from 3 by the end of the year. But he has a big enough body of work to where he's going to be an above average all-around scorer for the remainder of this year. And he just absolutely fits what the Pistons are doing. He plugs so many holes on the offense. This is just to be a no-brainer for the Pistons and for him to, lock in almost potentially up to $40 billion, in the twilight of his career.
I don't know why he's not a Los Angeles Laker. Like, why did the Lakers not trade for that man whenever they had the chance? Like, he's exactly what they need right now. And I don't mean to bring up the Lakers on this podcast because I get frustrated with the podcast I listen to always talking about the Lakers, but there is no reason he's not on the Los Angeles Lakers. And what a great move by Troy Weaver to bring him to Detroit. And he's been a great addition to the organization and the team.
Yeah, collective brain fart by all the contending teams in the NBA to let Bojan go to the Pistons, because the Pistons they gave up Saban Lee, who was still a project, and then Kelly Olynyk, who was a good player, but
he's playing well right now for Utah. But
he's a really good player. It's just for this team that had so much depth at center already, I think it was just an awkward fit. So. No brainer trade. Like, he's been arguably Detroit's best player through the first 8 games. It just blows my mind. Like, I'm watching Milwaukee tonight. Like, Milwaukee couldn't have cobbled together anything to go get him. Like, it blows my mind that the Pistons were able to get him for that. Like, he's been so good.
Well, it's not like they added some first-round pick or something crazy. Like, it was Saban Lee and Kelly Olynyk, and that was it. And Kelly Olynyk off not a very good season, Omari. Like, and this isn't throwing shade at KO. I love the KO signing. I thought he was going to come back and have a good season this year, but Bojan is a bucket, man. He is getting buckets, and there's a lot of contenders that could use that man right now. I don't care how bad he is defensively.
Yeah, no, again, it's a big head scratcher in every passing game. I'm just looking at these contending teams that have obvious holes, especially the Lakers. It's like, Like, you were really that glued to like your draft picks who are like a freshman and like a seventh grader right now? Like, it doesn't make any sense. LeBron's 38 or 30, however old LeBron is. He started at 39.
He's old, man.
He's old, so he needs to do everything you can to maximize your window now. So the Pistons are happy, obviously very happy. Yeah, Troy Weaver put off a coup. I don't know how, but hey, he's clearly happy here. He's extended, and it's a good deal for everybody involved.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the rookies, Omari. And what have you thought now that we've got a little bit larger of a sample size watching them play? And what do you want to see from them moving forward? Because I have a couple things, not for each, but one thing for each that I think is important for their growth throughout the rest of the season. I don't know if we'll see it or not, but obviously they've had a really good start to their careers. What have you thought? What do you want to see moving forward from those two guys?
Yeah, I think Ivy, as far as just the start to his rookie season, this is probably close to the best case scenario. He's getting downhill with ease, but I think it's not just how he gets downhill, but how he's able to really navigate traffic, I think, pretty well. And he just glides, so it's not, sometimes you have to watch it again and you're like, yeah, he really, once he gets going, he's at that speed and he just does things so quickly that sometimes you take for granted that it's like, oh, he just squoves in between Giannis and Brook Lopez to get that layup. And the passing, too. I think he's very aware of his gravity and how he could bend defenses. And for him to already have a very strong awareness of that, this early into his career, when just watching him at Purdue last season, it didn't always seem like he was aware of how his gravity could open up those passing opportunities. I think Ivy's first 7 games have been pretty close to maybe the best case scenario for him. He looks every bit as athletic as he looked in college. His first step is great. The way he navigates traffic is pretty good. You still want to see him get that in-between game going because sometimes he kind of gets stuck and he's taking awkward shots, kind of in between the free throw line and the rim. And he's got to be able to do something in there. He had some awkward shots tonight. I thought that was just, he didn't know what to do. He kind of got stuck. But overall, he's going to be in the Rookie of the Year race, I think, if he keeps this up. Okay, I say that, but Paulo Banchero has been playing like prime Carmelo, so I don't know. But he'll be in the discussion, I think. And then Jalen Duren, again, I think you expect him to be raw as an 18-year-old, but his rebounding numbers have been absolutely insane, especially considering he didn't rebound that well during Summer League. And we were like, is that going to be an issue for him? And it's like, no, he is. Per minute, he's the best rebounder on the team by a pretty wide margin. Now, Isaiah Stewart rebounded the ball extremely well, but Duren's been great. Just how physically imposing he is, just his catch radius on lobs, rebounds. He is just an absolute freak of an athlete. And I think his timeline is probably longer than Ivy's, but at the same time, you think about him at 22, and he just might be a beast at 22, which I think for the Pistons is very exciting as well.
I've been super impressed with Jaden Ivey's nuance in the ball screen, Omari, just snaking screens, putting defenders in jail, changing pace, just being patient. I did not see that coming. I was all in on the passing. I've raved about it. I've talked about it. I tweeted about it, but he's been way better changing pace in the half court than what I thought. That's been really impressive for someone so early in his career. And we continue to see it. The mid-range has to come. And I don't know that we're going to see it. There was multiple examples tonight, especially with the scheme that the Bucks play. We'll see it again on Wednesday night with the Bucks, where he's got to get the floater game. That in between, it's got to come around. I don't know if he gets it in his rookie season. It'll be a longer term development. And he had been shooting the 3-point ball pretty well. I think he struggled tonight, but overall really good. Jalen Duren, I'm with you. I think some of the more nuanced things, the screen and roll, those type of things, defensive drop coverage being in the right spot. But those guys, the influx of athleticism that we talked about, that we felt like Troy Weaver had drafted on draft night, it sure shows itself every night when those two are on the floor.
Yeah, I think so. And just the athleticism that they give this team, we talk about it a lot, but the Pistons are just so noticeably more athletic than they were last year, largely because of those two rookies. And I think they both played with a little bit more poise than I think you probably expect, for two players that early into their career. Yeah, Ivy especially, I think you still see a lot of rookie moments from him. But just the way he kind of reads the floor, I think his footwork's a little bit better than expected. And then you also just see so much more room for improvement. His handle could definitely be tightened up a lot. As he starts to do those things, if he gets any semblance of a floater, get that handle a little bit tighter, he can just be an absolute monster. He's one of those guys where it's I really don't know how he's going to be defended because his first step alone just makes him a distant matchup for basically anybody you put in front of him.
So I think as I've gotten more into the draft content stuff and breaking players down, you realize how important context is. And both of these guys were in constructs that made it tough for them to really shine. Purdue with the two bigs, it was talked a lot about, but the lane wasn't always open for Jaden Ivey. And so some of his decision maybe looked questionable because the floor wasn't spaced. And then Jalen Duren was playing with essentially no point guard at Memphis. And so he wasn't able to show the ball screen and roll and all those things. And so I think it's important, to really pay attention to that. And it is hard, but to know that there's a lot of context with these guys in the college schemes and on the floor and the coaching style and all those things that those guys are in.
It's definitely one of those situations where you just have to trust that some players are going to look a lot better in the NBA than they looked in college. We're even seeing that with Paolo now. Like Ivy, he didn't have a lot of shooters at Purdue. The lane was cramped because their offense revolved around two bigs. So some stuff for the NBA is just easier for him. He has wider lanes. He has shooters to kick out to. Just his style of play, I think just looks a lot better in the NBA, and just some stuff is just gonna come easy for him. Like the passing, I just think he's not doing anything like super, super unique or special, although he has had some really, I think creative passes, like he had the over-the-shoulder one against the Wizards last week, but just drive and kick, like you have got like open shooters, find open shooters. If you drive and you have Isaiah Stewart cutting, you can hit him for a dunk because you had two defenders, kind of commit to you on that drive. Like he understands that he has gravity when he drives, and that when he bends the defense, his teammates are going to be open. So just very, simple stuff. But that was not something we always saw at Purdue. We've seen that a lot just in the first 2 weeks. So I think his ceiling as a passer is probably a lot higher than even a lot of scouts, a lot of draft analysts may have guessed 3 months from now. And then Duren, he went from not playing with any point guards to playing with four. So that, and they're all NBA level passers. So I think that helps him a lot, for very obvious reasons. There was just stuff last year that didn't come easy for him because his game on offense obviously revolves around the ability for his teammates to create for him. So both of those, I think that just kind of speaks to the power of, just having a smart front office, smart talent scouts, people who understand the difference between college and the NBA, and just trusting that talented players will figure it out.
I got to ask you about Killian Hayes Omari before we shut down the episode, because I don't know what to think right now. The shooting hasn't been good. The defense is always good. He has some games where he throws some nice passes. I'm starting to get a little worried because gone are the excuses of it's only year 2. He's played over 100 games or close to 100 games now. I'm not saying it's like over for him as an NBA player at all, but I'm starting to wonder if this is going to work in Detroit. Like, it's getting close to like, man, this may be a guy that needs a change of scenery in the way that Marvin Bagley III needed a change of scenery. I'm not all the way there yet, but I'm starting to get there a little bit. There's been games where he's been visually frustrated. I don't remember what game it was this week where Corey Joseph got to finish the game instead of him. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I'm a little bit nervous with how this is going to end up.
No, I mean, I can't really – it's tough to predict the future, but – yeah, obviously he's just not been able to put the ball in the hole at all, and that's a problem. We talk about the second unit, not really having enough scoring, but I'm just looking at Killian's averages now. He's shooting 17% overall, 13.3% from three. Like that's. I don't need to say that that's not good. We talk about it a lot. You have to be able to bring something. He has to get to the line. He has to be able to get to the rim. Finish at the rim. He's getting there. He just hasn't been finishing. Knock down open threes, something. And he hasn't really shown any of those things yet. And I think it's, tough, when essentially, whenever he takes a shot, like that's, the defense is like, okay, like we did our job, right? And that's, like, that sounds harsh, but he's got to hit more shots. Like, you're just not going to cut it shooting that poorly. It's 8 games. He still has a lot of season to kind of get his legs from under him. But, it's been a recurring issue throughout his career. And, he's also, I think, taking a little bit of a step back from preseason. He kind of had that lefty hook he was going to that looked good. And
yes.
I don't think we've seen that once in the regular season. Maybe it's confidence. I don't know what it is exactly. But, you have Cade Cunningham, you have Ivy now. So he isn't in the spotlight like he was previously, so you would hope that would help him, maybe just attack and do the things that he needs to do without, have the pressure of having to carry the franchise he felt maybe 2 seasons ago.
I literally wrote confidence down on my notepad as we were talking, or as I was listening to you talk about, like, he had it in the preseason. It was there. I was so excited about what we had seen. And it was 2 games into the season and it was gone now. And, if it comes back, then I'll completely, I'll keep the right to change my mind. But I just wonder if he's going to be able to find a consistent confidence and comfortability playing with this team and this organization, because through almost 100 games now, I don't feel like we've seen it. So we don't need to harp on it. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because I am starting to get a little nervous. It is only 8 games. There's a lot of season left. I don't think he's getting traded like at the deadline or something like that. But at some point, we have to see some positivity. We have to see that confidence come back. Our Pistons will play 3 more games before the next recording. We will record next Monday night after the Thunder game, but they have the Bucks on Wednesday, Cavs on Friday, the Thunder on Monday. Omari, you were right about the record whenever we predicted last episode. You've predicted 1 win. I predicted 2. Neither of us were right about what win that would be, but we got those 3 games coming up. What's your prediction for this week?
Yeah, I think they are going. So we have Wednesday at the Bucks, Friday at the Cavs, Monday at the Lakers.
Thunder.
At the Thunder. I think they're going to go, probably wants to say 2-1.
Ooh, you're going to say 2-1 or you're waiting for me?
I'm going to say 2-1. I'm going to say 2-1. I think I've seen enough from these last 2 games that they should beat the Thunder, and of course I say that, and I don't have any wood to knock on, and they're probably going to lose by 30. But I'm going to go 2-1. I'm going to inject a little positivity in the podcast to close this out.
All right, I'm gonna go 1 and 2 just to change it back negative. I got one thing. We got to bring the food stuff back, Omari. So Javier Rodriguez, DM me. I got to get your thoughts on this real quick. This is a turkey, ham, Colby cheese, mustard, Dijon mustard, pickle, jalapeno chips, jalapenos, hot sauce, and toasted bread sandwich. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I can get behind it.
No,
sure.
You cannot. Shut.
Yes, I can.
You
Yes,
are lying.
Yes, I
You
can.
don't even know what I just said. Look at this. I know we actually see each other's video. I know we're not on YouTube yet, guys. So I'm showing Omari the sandwich. I don't even know if he can see it. I think there's a glare. No.
A little bit of a glare. Just on paper, it sounds fine. Like I will say.
No, it doesn't.
Like when he says toasted bread, I hope he doesn't mean like actual toast, because I think actual toast is just a little bit too crispy for bread. Like it needs some softness.
It looks toasted. It looks toasted in the picture. He sent me a picture of it. He said he pretty much said I didn't have the gumption to try it, and I said, Javier, you are exactly right. I do not have the gumption to try it.
All right, I mean that sounds like a reasonable sandwich. You have turkey, you have ham, you have mustard, you have cheese, chips, hot sauce, toasted bread. I would say that's probably not a sandwich I would make. I don't know if I would do hot sauce and jalapenos. I think jalapenos have a little bit too much of a like pickled flavor for them to work. Well, I guess it depends on if you're doing like pickled jalapenos or like fresh jalapenos. But either way, I'm not crazy about jalapenos on sandwiches. It's more so for me like pizza and whatnot. But I can get behind it. Like I think that's fine. I think that is a fundamentally sound sandwich. I give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. Like I think that is a very solid sandwich. It is it's the Jared Goff of sandwiches. Like it gets the job done.
That is I don't know who a bad quarterback is, but that sandwich throws 4 interceptions in the first half. That's what that sandwich does. So whoever that quarterback in the NFL is, that's what that sandwich is. No.
So what was soft for you? Like which part of the sandwich do you not agree with?
All of it.
Even like the cheese and the turkey and the ham?
I mean, there's so many things. And he has chips on it.
Yeah.
Why do you put hot sauce on a sandwich?
Hot sauce is good.
Tell everybody thank you, and we'll see you guys next week.
Right,
it was such a good episode, and this ruined my whole vibe.
I thought that was what we were going to agree on. I'm sorry.
You did not think we were going to agree on that one.
Fine to me. Yeah, we'll roast you on Twitter tomorrow. All right, thank you everybody for listening. Shout out to our editor, Kirkland Crawford. Our executive producer, Antoinette Delgado, and our audio producer, Kerry Jr. II.
And shout out Robin Chan tonight. He's filling in tonight to hold it down.
Yes, we have a new guy, Robin, who's filling in tonight and stayed up late to allow us to record this episode after the game. So thank you, Robin. Shout out to you as well. And shout out to Wes. We got to figure out another Wes episode soon. We'll talk to you all soon.